Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ransom's Roundtable. This is our restaurant industry conversation roundtable today. Before we get started, I just want to make one note that all participants in these roundtables are here to just share their experiences and their knowledge about the restaurant industry. Their appearance does not indicate any support or endorsement of my Kelly Ransom's campaign or candidacy. This is an information gathering effort for the community at large. We thank everyone for their time and sharing their knowledge and experience with us today. So that's my one note. Welcome everyone. I think we're a small enough group that we could go around and introduce ourselves if you're comfortable. And anything you want to share about where you are at in the restaurant industry these days, if at all, your involvement. So I will just start with going down the list. Tess McColgan, my campaign manager, welcome.
Hi, so my name is Tess McColgan. Though I'm not currently working in the restaurant industry, I have held mostly server positions, a little bit of bar work in the past. I've worked at, a Bertucci's. I've worked at Nappertandy's in Roslindale, 753 South, some awesome local Rossi businesses. And now my role involves supporting small businesses. So definitely this is an issue that's close to my heart and my mind.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going down the line of who I see in the participants. So Chris.
What up? You all know me.
Well, the people watching later don't.
Oh yeah, true. All right. Well, I'm Chris Ransom. I've been in the restaurant industry for 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. Started as a line cook, kitchen manager, then a hotel, and then healthcare, and then catering. And I am currently at Harvard. In a union, so a little bit better situation than most restaurant people, but still has the same issues that we all face. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Kamal.
Hello. I'm Kamal Johnson. I've been in the restaurant industry for, I don't even really know how long, but like 15, 16, 17 years. Currently, I'm kind of all over the place right now. I'm helping out at a restaurant where I used to be the head chef of. Also, so I'm going to be helping out another friend of mine who's a new head chef at a different restaurant in Coolidge Corner this weekend. And I will be starting next week as the new executive sous chef at Boston Medical Center. And used to work at Bella Luna and did some time at a restaurant called Hops and Scotch. And here I am.
Thank you for being here. Sarah.
So my name is Sarah Shaw. I am currently the general manager at Nappertandy's in Roslindale. We are working on also reopening Eugene O'Neill's in Jamaica Plain. I've been doing this for literally my entire adult life. I have served, I've bartended, I've managed, I've done it all. Been in Roslindale for the last 8 or 9 years now. So I've been around and I'll be around. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. So y'all know, but we're recording this for people to view later. My name is Kelly Ransom. I am a candidate for Boston City Council District 6, which covers Jamaica Plain, West Roxbury, Roslindale, back of the hill, and a little bit of Roxbury. And I thought that I know that it's very important for our restaurant, food service, and food business and hospitality industry to get a little bit more love and attention than they have in the past when it comes to economic development in the city, especially what has just happened with COVID. I myself worked in the industry for nearly 10 years. I worked, I don't even know how many places, but I've held every position from dishwasher to chef to bartender to food runner. I don't like all of the positions. And I left the industry because I got burnt out. So that's one thing that happens to a lot of people in this industry. And if you burn out and you don't leave, all the more power to you. But I burnt out and I left. When I started writing my policy platform for this campaign, I went into this knowing that I really wanted to focus a lot on the restaurant, food service, and hospitality industry, because I know the challenges that existed before COVID even happened. And I know there's challenges in permitting and city level things, but there's also challenges with staff making sub-minimum wages and having access to healthcare and mental health care and recovery services. And I think it's about time that we step up and we serve those who serve us every day. So I want to just open, these roundtable conversations are different from the halls of progress that we're having, where it's just sort of like a back and forth conversation where we ask each other questions and chit chat. And then, yeah, once we feel that we've like touched on the most important points, we'll go on with our days. So I really appreciate everyone taking time today. I'm just going to open it up with, if anyone would like to share their COVID-19 story, like the day that it happened, or like what you experienced throughout, or how it affected your job, please, would love to hear it.
I'll start, I guess. Happened when we were in Key West. I got a phone call as I was renting a car to drive 10 hours across the state to Tampa to get in the airport. And it was like, hey, we're closed. And then it was like, a couple months, we'll let you know, type of thing. And it ended up being until February of this year. So spent a lot of time with Kamal. Spent a lot of time with my buddy Zach, who is F&B manager at a hotel. He was off until about September. So flip side, we kind of had like chef days off every day. So that was fun. It ended up being a good summer, and now I'm back at work, or I was back at work. We're closed for the summer again. So call back, who knows? But yeah, it was a long time off.
And can I just ask, were you paid or did you have to go on unemployment?
I was paid. Harvard can afford that, so they were generous enough to pay us. It was also a contract year, so yeah. So I lucked out more than most people, definitely. But yeah.
And you're in local 26?
I'm in local 26, which still has its own problems. It's still kitchen, you still get yelled at for calling out sick and all that bullshit. But yeah. Sorry, BS.
That's okay.
Yes.
We can put a boop.
Yeah. Kitchen talk, sorry.
There's kitchen people in here, like everyone should expect to hear a little bit of language.
That's like part of the reason you're into the industry. So, well, in the kitchen for me, so you can just say what you want whenever you want and have tattoos, and you don't have to talk to people. Yeah.
Thank you.
So my COVID story is very long. Very long.
It's not that long. No, thank you.
No. The time period I was off for about 10 months. So yeah, it's my story.
Anyone else care to share?
Oh, what the heck? Go for it, Kamal.
Okay. So what?
The day was March.
I was the chef manager, which is chef as well as general manager of a cafe inside of a pharmaceutical company in Lexington. And I believe it was the day before St. Patrick's Day was the last day that we did service. And basically it was like a buffet. So everything we did was just shut down. They kept me on furlough for a while until about September. And then throughout all of that, I was collecting unemployment, unfortunately. Then they terminated my position in September, and I kind of just, there was nothing opening up, so there was no work anywhere at all, for, what we do,
Right.
basically. I mean, there were places that are like, stayed open by Uber Eats and things like that, but not in the industry that I was in, since I had left restaurants already.
Oh,
But then, I'd say around January, I got a job at Emerson College, cooking in their dining hall. Just to get back into it, because I felt like I was losing it a little bit,
Mm.
like not just mentally, but losing like my touch, my like as a chef. Because I did do some cooking at home. There was like quarantine cuisines. I would do something, every now and then, post some pictures and make people hungry. But then Emerson, that ended in the middle of April. Everybody got laid off because they weren't going to be doing an in-person summer classes. So,
Mhm.
we all got laid off. And since then, I kind of just been bouncing around. Got back on unemployment, unfortunately. Really didn't want to be on unemployment. So, I mean, I like working. I like moving around, and I can't be still. So I had to get into something else. So just keeping up with like Indeed, or applying and sending resumes everywhere. And luckily, I do have some good friends who are also in the industry who have had luck and have held their positions, and they've been reaching out to me, offering me days or nights, helping out in their restaurants or whatever. Kind of we help each other that way. And finally, just about to get started on a new job at Boston Medical.
Woo.
Yeah, it's going to be executive sous chef. It's going to be probably a lot of work, is what they said. But I mean, I'm like all this pent up energy.
Yeah,
So I'm just gonna like hit the ground running, I guess.
that's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Sarah.
Oh, hi. So when shutdown happened, I was working at Democracy Brewing. I was serving and bartending. And I remember sitting there and being like, wait, can we like use our sick time for this? Like it was just gonna be like a 2-week thing, right? So it was not a 2-week thing. And they had it figured out like by the time that we were leaving that night, they were like, all right, everybody come back in tomorrow, take everything you can out of the walk-ins, out of the freezer. We're gonna feed everybody. So that was our like last hurrah, was going in and stripping the walk-ins bare. Like that was how I spent St. Patrick's Day 2020, was looting a walk-in, which was real weird. And this went on. We were home the entire summer, and then in September, my unemployment started getting a little bit questionable. Like I thought that I wasn't going to be eligible for the extra money moving forward into the future. And I kind of panicked. So I went back to work in September, basically full time. I got a great job at Casa Verde in Jamaica Plain, and I have nothing but good things to say about the ownership there. They took really good care of us. They paid us well on top of tips. They were very conscientious of like transmission possibilities. Like somebody on our team got sick and they shut the whole thing down. Like that was it. There was no questions asked. It wasn't, well, we'll see what happens. It was, nope, we're done here. Like give it a week. So, they were very, very respectful of our health and our well-being. And I really appreciated that. And then in March of this year, I got a phone call from my favorite boss of all time. And he said, what are you doing these days? And I told him, and he said, I want to talk to you. And I was like, oh boy, this isn't good. So that is how I got roped back into Napper Tandy's in Roslindale, which we finally got reopened on May 5th of this year. So that bar was closed for, not that I counted, 415 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was a long time and it was a lot of work. And I'm really proud of what the team there has done. You know, I've asked a lot of them, I feel like, and they've responded really well. And everybody's vibe has been positive, and I'm really proud of them, man. Like, and you know, if I didn't have Jimmy to lean on, I would be in a world of hurt. So thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Jamie. My hair is driving me nuts today. I don't care. I want the world to know I'm a real person and I have hair problems today. So question for the group. What is something that happened in the restaurant industry during the pandemic, COVID, that you believe should continue going on? Like, we had a lot of changes to, you know, it was a lot easier to permit for outdoor dining. A lot of restaurants continued to pay their staff when they could. I'm just curious if there were any positive revelations to where you work that you would keep going forward.
I mean, I think this is the first time in history that we've kind of, you know, we seized the means of production through this. You know what I mean? Like, it's not us banging down doors anymore, begging for jobs. People are coming to us. That's a first. I've never seen anything like that. You know, I think we're not treating chefs and line cooks as unskilled labor as much anymore. So
That's
people are
interesting.
seeing the value of their work, which I really like. And I hope that we can continue to, you know, pay people what they deserve to be paid.
Right.
I definitely think that you know, all the outdoor seating is nice, and especially for smaller restaurants, it gives them a little more space to make a little more money. So I think that that is something that should probably stay around, because you know, I feel like it hasn't created that much of a problem traffic wise, on the sidewalks or on the streets, at least wherever I go.
I would agree. I've heard some complaints about parking, but
Yeah, well, you know, you can walk. You can walk places. You know, there are things and ways to get around. Um, so I think that has been something that's been a good thing to come out of it.
definitely.
I do have to add to the parking bit of it. When we petitioned the city for outdoor dining, we requested space on the sidewalk and on the street. And I was out there for days with a measuring tape. I was like, I'm not joking. There were places where they had so much concern about accessibility, like, you know, people who may require a walker or wheelchair or crutches, that even though I was fully, like more than fully compliant on like how much space you need of open sidewalk, including the seating, they just threw the road seating at me. They were like, well, no, you can't have the sidewalk at all. So here's 6 parking spots. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had, I sent back so many full color illustrations and diagrams to the city. I didn't realize it was going to be that comprehensive, but I learned a lot. I would have been happy to just take the 4 tables on the sidewalk and be done with it, but
Right.
they decided that street parking was going to be where it was at for us. So
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't going to say no.
And were they supportive enough? Like, helping you?
I think there were certain, like Joe Coppinger at ONS reached out a couple of times. Great guy, super helpful. We really appreciated their support. In the beginning, especially as somebody who had never done any of this before, it was a little bit stressful because like I didn't know exactly what I was doing, and the city wasn't like, if you called the city with a question, they would answer your question very specifically. They would say, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. They wouldn't say, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. Here is what you need to do. there was no continuity of information. So I did in the beginning spend a lot of time spinning my wheels until I learned how to ask the city questions to get the answers that I needed. But
You
we
just
got it
learned that
done.
on your own.
Yeah, I said, we'll do it live. And that was how it went.
And were there any costs associated?
I don't remember offhand. This was in March. I started working on getting this. It may have been $250, or I might just have my wires completely crossed with a different license. So,
Tess, do you have any input on the outdoor dining process?
My input is that despite the barriers that you came up against, Sarah, which I mean, those are definitely challenges that I feel and see. But this has actually been the easiest it's been, the most accessible getting outdoor permitting has been for restaurants, and being able to consider taking away parking, one spot outside of a restaurant. And in order to be ADA compliant and accessibility compliant on the sidewalk, I think is a huge step forward for the city. And I think that, the ongoing concerns about being able to have enough parking spots for outdoor dining and other sorts of outdoor public space installations, that's kind of probably going to go on. But I would love to see at the city level continued access to this kind of permitting and continued exceptions made when it comes to removing a parking spot to enable a business to have a more sustainable outdoor seating, more sustainable, jobs for their servers, income. Yeah, I'd love to see it continue.
I do too.
And
I
become
acknowledge
easier.
Jimmy's here. Hi, Jimmy.
Become easier for you, Sarah.
yeah, next time I will be a fully trained professional and I will know exactly what I'm doing. So it'll be fine.
Awesome. Jimmy, do you want to introduce yourself real quick? You don't have to.
I mean, I feel like everyone here knows me.
You're being recorded.
This is going to be shared on the website. So
Oh, okay. I'm Jim Shaw. I am senior staff at Nappertandy's Roslindale, Eugene O'Neill's, Nappers Norwood. That's about it. been bartending for 6 years in that restaurant group. So been at it for a while.
there's a lot of lifers in this Zoom right now.
Yeah.
So, any other positive things that happened because of COVID that you'd like to see move forward before I ask a negative question?
I definitely agree with the outdoor dining. I mean, permitting has been so hard for so many years, and they proved they could do it like that. And, like Kamal said, with small restaurants, 4 tables makes a big difference when you're flipping them every half hour, or if you're a short order, flipping them every 12, 15 minutes, that increases the revenue pretty much significantly and helps pay staff higher wages, which we also got from this, which has been a long fight. Also, I feel like now finally people recognize it, not just as, jobs for people that can't work anywhere else, basically, and more as a trade, because it is one of the oldest professions. People need to eat. So I feel like it's kind of, especially where things are getting unionized, like my job, for instance, Local 26 is also at the Renaissance. They also had to fight for all their wages to get back, even being in the union. They got laid off, came back, laid off, came back. So there's all these challenges that still happen on the other side. But I do feel like there's more respect now for the industry to see how much people went and had to eat out because they don't know how to cook for themselves, or they don't have time to cook for themselves, even though you're home all day with Zoom or whatever it is. A lot of people don't know how to cook. A lot of people my age and younger don't know how to cook. So I think people really sort of realized, wow, I can't not fend for myself, but I rely on these people so much more than I realized in the beginning of all this. And I think it led to, you still hear horror stories, but a lot better treatment of waitresses and bartenders, and even in the back of the house, just more general respect for, hey, thanks for working for during a pandemic type of thing. because we were
Yeah.
frontline workers.
I completely agree, Chris.
Yeah.
People have been much more respectful and thankful to the industry, it seems.
And it definitely leads to a better customer staff clientele relationship. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's my two cents.
That's great. But no, I know that a lot of holes in the system, holes in the industry have been brought to light because of this experience that we've had for the past year and a half. And I'm wondering if anyone has any input on some glaring issues that have been brought to light in the restaurant industry that need to be fixed or are starting to like get the attention they need to be fixed.
I think one of the biggest problems that I've seen is it's been really hard to staff, not because people are lazy and they're just sitting home and collecting checks. A lot of people just straight up walked away. They just went, I'm never waiting on anyone ever again. I'm never pouring another beer. I'm never flipping another omelet. I'm done. They spent the pandemic going back to school, finishing programs, educating themselves so that they could walk away and say, well, you told me to get a real job, so I got a real job.
Real job.
Real job. I don't
Real
pay
job.
my landlord with Monopoly money. So that's the biggest challenge that I've seen. Like I was calling people that I used to work with and I was like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you working? I would love to have you on my team. And they were like, nah, I'm done. I'm just not doing this anymore.
Wow.
I'm over it. I'm talking at least 10, 12 people. That's a big, like, that's an entire staff in a restaurant our size,
Right.
you know? And they're not doing it anymore. That is a challenge. There's no overcoming that. Somebody like money you can eventually compete with, but somebody making an informed decision to walk away from something that they've been doing for years so that they can better themselves. There's no way. How do you talk somebody out of that in all good conscience? You
Right.
don't. You got to let people live. But so now we're getting to a point where people who would never be considered for hiring, like applications that I would have looked at and said, I don't even think you've ever been inside a bar, never mind worked at one. Now I'm hiring these people because I have no choice, which, that's fine. Like I love giving people a new opportunity, but it makes it really, really hard to go full tilt, full time the way that you used to, because you've got people who are so green, they smell like fresh cut grass everywhere. And you can't teach them fast enough.
Right.
There's no way to do it. That's my chief complaint right now.
I have a thought on that. Just like as an observer of this, like I was not working in a restaurant during the pandemic, but I mean, it seems like because restaurant workers and food service workers of all kind have basically become necessary employees, have been officially categorized as necessary employees. People have to be on the ground who can't work from home from a laptop. And that has kind of revealed to many the value of these employees, right? And
Absolutely.
these experiences and expertises that maybe have not been properly valued at a bureaucratic level in the past, and even like a industry level, right? Like, I think within restaurants, Sarah, what you're realizing now is like, I need employees who have experience. They're not feeling recognized on a long-term scale. They're not feeling valued in a long-term way. And so like they're leaving the profession. And so what's happening is, though there's a public demand for good service, good food, eating out, enjoying yourself, especially post-pandemic, that the valuing of these employees happening on a larger scale through, initiatives, and things like that is not there. And so just something I think about is like, what do you imagine as somebody managing employees in a restaurant, or also to the folks here who are just lifers and have had lots of experiences, like what would make it feel more like you're growing within this industry and like you're valued, and like are there programs that could be kind of supported and implemented on a larger scale that would incentivize restaurants to have internal growth, things like that?
I think you touched on a lot of really important things. And I think at the very baseline, like what Jimmy and Chris were saying about people in general, like the dining and drinking public, they have been exponentially more respectful than they were when things shut down. Like there is a certain gratitude among people, like, hey, thanks for being open. We're glad you're here. A lot of times people who maybe don't have the same kind of industry experience or the years in that we do, I think people don't realize how narrow margins are. Like the guy that I work for is not a billionaire by any stretch of the imagination. He's a father, he's a husband, he's got 4 kids to put through school, and he owns 5 restaurants that just survived a pandemic. This guy is not giving me health insurance because he needs to buy another boat. So when people say, just pay people more, just offer them health insurance, especially for the mom and pops, it's not that simple. Like when you try to explain to somebody, well, now you're paying $30 for your dinner at a bar, like that's where that money needs to come from. It's really, really hard, I think, to make people understand that everything has a cost and a price associated with it. So it's not as simple as saying, just pay everybody $23 an hour, problem solved. Well, you're going to stop coming in now because your cheeseburger is $32. Now I'm not paying anybody anything. So I do think that situational awareness is increasing a little bit, and I appreciate that. And it definitely does put people who are working in a more actionable position. I wish I could pay everybody $23, you know?
On top of that, food costs are
Through the roof
outrageous right now.
Absolutely. We're not even carrying bone-in chicken wings right now because they're like prohibitively expensive. It's insane.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think, touching on what Sarah and Tess said, and also what you said about burning out. There was this weird thing when this all first went down, when restaurants started closing, and I was having a talk with my chef de cuisine at the time. And we were like, this is nuts. Last year you could throw a dart at a wall and get a job at a restaurant. Everyone was always hiring. And then I think, like people being burnt out, they finally got this work-life balance where they could go interview. They could go look at something they've been trying to do, go back to school and stuff like that. And they have been looking for that out for so long, but you don't have time to do it in the restaurant industry. You can't even go to a doctor's appointment. So, and now there's so many people wanting to get into it because there's this surge of people that aren't filling these positions, like Sarah said. And so I think that just kind of adds to the fact that it's such a marginalized industry. And then with the profit margins being as little as 5 to 7% after labor and everything else. And, a lot of things people don't think about is you have these stoves where the gas is on 24/7. You have these vent hoods that are on 14, 15 hours a day, the lighting, the water, it all adds up. And then you have food costs that need to be below, say, 32%, 27% at some places. And it's not feasible for these small businesses to pay their staff what they need to be paid because nobody wants to pay what food is actually worth. And the price of food for the customer has not gone up in so many years because you can go to a local restaurant that say, get something from the butcher shop and you can get a sirloin for $25. So why are you going to go pay for it at a steakhouse type of thing? And if your local restaurant starts charging that, which is what it's actually worth when you add in the service and the labor, then everyone's going to start complaining because they've been used to what they've had for so long for so cheap, which I think is why now everyone's sort of realizing we need to change this and we need to figure out how to change this. And it's not easy because food costs are outrageous right now. Like Sarah said, the shortages of meat, the shortages of everything, the shortages of staff, and there's shortage of customers too now. So, with everything opening up back up, it's kind of getting to a level point, but it'll be interesting to see if that steady rise continues or if it just levels back out and reverts back to what it was. That's my take on it.
I think also after this last year, how there were some people who had jobs where you could just stay at home and work. And with what we do, you really couldn't do that. So a lot of people, I feel like, got scared in case there's another thing that could happen.
Yeah.
That would make you have to stay home again, but still continue to pay your rent and your bills and maintain life, you know. So I think that that's another reason why people have left the restaurant, just because of like they got scared. It
Yeah,
was a scary time. Like it was like a whole year,
I,
no
I
work.
I know many people who just completely quit the industry just because they didn't want to do it anymore. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I've got terrible asthma or something, and I'm never coming back, or I'll be back in 2 years. And then conversely, I've talked to plenty of people who are non-industry. They're like, oh, what have you been up to for the past year and a half? I'm like, sitting in my backyard. Like the restaurant wasn't open.
Yeah.
What do you think I was doing? And they're like, oh, I just worked the whole time sitting at my computer. I know, must be nice.
Yeah, so I feel like that, you know, the people who were working sometimes would look at me like I was just on purpose. I'm just sitting here, not looking for a job, but it's just there just weren't places to work, you know. There's no way that
There's
you
just
can,
nothing to do.
yeah, unless, I mean, you can't cook for people out of your kitchen and then send it around. You couldn't do that. You couldn't, there was no contact. You're just like,
Yeah, you
sitting.
can't like send chicken piccata from your home office.
Yeah. I mean, it made me some days feel like a lump, just like a lump on the couch, where my roommates are all of them working every day, didn't have to take time off. It really kind of made me feel like, what the hell am I doing? I went outside a lot.
You had to.
So
like-
I want to shift a little. I think that I know that an issue within the industry before COVID has always been access to healthcare, but specifically mental health and recovery services. And our industry that I'm not longer in, but this industry has really high rates of substance use disorder and mental health issues. And I'm wondering, does anyone in this room right now have health insurance through where they work?
No.
Christopher?
Outrageous, but I mean, it's outrageous, but it is good health insurance. But at the same time, like I said, you don't have time to take off.
Right, yeah.
You know, and I'm in catering. I've been in catering for a while. And part of the reason why I went to Harvard is because when I was a sous chef, you know, you're working 10, 14-hour days. You don't eat. You know, you miss people's birthdays, you miss all these life events, and you know, there's nothing you can do about it. And you can't even go get healthcare, even if you do have the health insurance. And another issue, which is unrelated, is just getting mental health services can take months or years, in
Period.
general. So, you know, trying to coordinate that when you work, you know, till 11, 2 o'clock at night. And then that also leads into, you know, shift drinks, stress that kind of just builds on top of that. And then, you know, you're out until the bar closes and you got to be in at, you know, 3 o'clock to set up your station, but you slept till 12. So you got nothing done. And then it's just kind of this whole spiral of trying to keep up with normal life because God forbid you call out sick, your station's not prepped, you know, someone takes your job or your hours get cut for simply trying to take a mental health day. Like me, for instance, I was forced to file for FMLA recently because they accused me of abusing sick time because I didn't look sick when I came back in, which is an overall industry. It's just, I don't know. I always say, like, you have to be kind of a masochist to work in this industry. Like, you love chaos because every 5 minutes something goes wrong and you have to fix it within 5 minutes. So you got to kind of thrive on that to be in this industry. And I like that. And a lot of people do, because you're always on the go. But at the same time, all that stress and all that pressure, especially if you have a mental illness or substance abuse disorder, just feeds into it over and over and over again. And that's when I got burnt out. And I was just like, I'm going to go back to being a cook. And it was like one of the best decisions I made. And luckily for me, I have somewhat of a work-life balance where I am. But like until the pandemic happened, no one had work-life balance, or well, it was more life balance at that point. But that gave a lot of people, including myself, time to actually find a therapist, get on medication, you know, address issues that haven't been addressed since long before kitchen industry. So I feel like that's always been an issue, and a lot of groups have started working on that. A lot of restaurant groups, which I think is great, but it's still a stigma within the industry of, you know, this masculinity of being weak, or, you know, oh, you can't keep up in the kitchen type of thing. Because you might have one of those days where you come in and you've worked 70 hours that week and you drop a Canberra of marinara all over the floor and you're like, today's the day, you know? So, so yeah, which I have done multiple times, like 40 gallons of marinara all over the floor. So yeah, it just constantly builds and builds and builds, and you never have the time to address it, and you never have the time to get the help you need, aside from the mental health industry being so hard to get in. So that's my,
Thank you.
yeah. Marinara is 86.
86 marinara.
Marinara is- well, this is great.
So something that I know it's important because I see it all around. Most of my friends, my closest friends, my chosen family work in the industry. It just happened that way. And I know that there are these barriers of, you know, even if you do have access to healthcare or you have mass health, you don't have the time to go and seek the help that you need, or even just getting to the point of sitting down and doing the research of finding the places where you can go, where there's support. One of the things that I really want to make I am going to make a priority is to launch an initiative that directly provides mental health and recovery resources for food service, restaurant, and hospitality workers. And the way that I vision that happening is creating a task force of folks who go into the restaurants when the staff is there, hand out resources, connect people, you know, if anyone's looking for certain, not even necessarily mental health and recovery services, but housing, and, you know, rental assistance, and lots of services that the city can provide to you know, to all of you, but you have no time to find those. So I think it would be helpful if we came to you, at least to start.
I
That
think
sounds like-
especially for people who are in a position where they not even like might not know where to start, but people who feel like they don't qualify for those resources for whatever reason. When the shutdown first happened and the brewery closed, I was on a team that started looking for resources in multiple languages, maybe for people who didn't have a social security number,
Yeah.
things like that. And Julia Mejia's office was very, very helpful in all that. They were instrumental in my success in getting this information to these people. Very much so. So
Yeah.
the resources definitely are there, but I do feel like there's a large contingent of our coworkers who might be afraid to ask for the help.
Right. And making it very language access one, but making it very clear that mixed documentation status will not affect, you know, your access to these resources in our city is really important. That's a great point.
That's kind of what I was going to say. Because in a lot of kitchens, you know, you've got people speaking, you know, a lot of different languages,
Yeah.
and it's even harder for them to find places and get support. So I think that sounds like an awesome idea of, you know, just bringing it to them, bringing it to us.
Yeah. I mean, I was there. I couldn't.
Yeah, you've seen it.
I couldn't go to a therapist. I couldn't go get help until I literally like went to the doctors crashing and burning, and they're like, you're having a mental health crisis and you need to stop right now. And we don't want anyone getting to that point. We also don't want anyone who is struggling with recovery or seeking, thinking about entering into recovery, to feel that they can't, because we got to be honest, the industry does perpetuate drinking and substance use, and it's prevalent. Like, what do you do after your shift? Usually you have a shift drink, and what are those shift drinks? Usually complimentary from the as a
whiskey, bourbon.
Yeah.
Tequila.
So
Put your own 5 minutes before you close.
even putting in some education for restaurant groups and industries to sort of make drinking not such a fundamental aspect of the team bonding. And that's a whole culture change that's going to take a really long time, but I think we need to start really being there for our folks who are struggling, and either want to go into recovery or can't, or are thinking about it, or are in recovery and still want to participate in the scene. I think these have been really important points that we've made today, and I see that we're rounding up to the hour, so I'm wondering if anyone has anything that they want to touch on that we didn't touch on, or ask me any questions, or ask questions to the group, or make any comments.
No, just thank you all for coming, for making time for this. Thank you all for making time for this today.
I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you guys for hosting us.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're looking, so thank you everyone that was here. Thank you everyone watching later. This will be posted up on our website. We are looking into, we booked all of these roundtables when the world had not been open yet. So we are looking into the future of doing more roundtables, specifically with this industry, in person in the future. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, if you have anything that you would like to add to this conversation and you weren't able to be here today, if you visit my website, www.votekellyransom.com, there's a form right in the front page that you can submit ideas and collaborate with us on things that you would like to see change in the district, in Boston, in the restaurant industry, or in any other policy area. So thank you everyone for being here today. Have a good shift if you're working. And 86 marinara.
86
86
marinara.
marinara, heard.
12 more hours to cook it.
We'll see and talk to you all again soon. Thank you.
Nice. Later.
I
Later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.